Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to create a Kubernetes clusters on your Windows machine in less than 5 minutes. Before I do that, I want to do a quick overview of the major components of a Kubernetes. So in this image you can see an Kubernetes clusters can have a series of pods, those blue boxes that can contain containers which contain your application. Then you have one or more services, and then you can have one or more deployments. So those are the three basic building blocks of Kubernetes conceptual model. So to deploy your application, you need to containerize your application before deploying it to Kubernetes. The pods, the individual pods will hold the containers that run your application. You don't need to create pods manually. Instead, you use deployments. So deployments will tell Kubernetes what images to deploy and how many replicas for each. And then finally, you have services that allow users to connect to your applications in the pods and provide load balancing when there are multiple replicas. So next, I'm going to show you how to create the Kubernetes clusters. It's going to be a single node Kubernetes cluster on Windows using Docker. Docker for desktop. It has a built-in feature for Kubernetes. Next, I'm going to show you how to deploy a Node API to test that it's working and it's deployed in your Kubernetes cluster. And then I'm going to scale it to multiple instances to see how easy it is to scale your application once it's deployed into Kubernetes. And in a future video, I'm going to show you how to do those same steps in a multi-node cluster in Azure or Google Cloud. So let's get started. If you have Docker Desktop installed, you just have to right click on it. You see there's an option for Kubernetes. I'm gonna go to settings, and then go to the Kubernetes tab and then enable it, and then click apply. This is gonna take a few minutes. So once the Kubernetes is enabled inside of Docker for desktop, next you need to install the Kubernetes command line tool. So to do that, I use Chocolatey, which is an installer for Windows. All you need to do is inside a command line do choco and then install, and then it's called kubernetes-CLI. This is gonna install the Kubernetes CLI, and since I already have it installed, all you need to do is go kubectl and then I'm gonna do get all, which gives me all the clusters. So I have I have the clusters here installed. It's on my local machine. There's no external IP, and I see it's running already. So what's next? Once you have Kubernetes enabled, and then you have the CLI, next you need to create a deployment. On my application, I'm going to use a sample Node.js API application. It's already containerized. You have the image, and the image is already uploaded into the Docker hub. So all you need to do is create a deployment. Since usually you do it using a YAML file, but since this is a simple deployment, you can do it through the command line. All you need to do is kubectl create deployment, and then you give it a name. I'm going to give it Kubia, and then you specify the image parameter, which is the name in Docker Hub. So it's called Kubia, and then version 1.0. So it says the deployment created. To see the status, you could do kubectl get deployments, or deploy for short. It says it's already deployed since 16 seconds ago. Next, as we saw in the graph here, you have your deployment, and I assume it's deployed inside one. So in our current cluster, we have only one pod right now, since by default it's going to create one replica if you don't specify it in the deployment. So next we need to create a service to expose our application to regular users outside of the cluster. So to do that, I'm going to do kubectl expose deployment kubia, that's the name, and then type, it's going to be load balancer, and then port 8080. kubectl expose deployment kubia type load balancer port 8080 service. So you can verify by doing kubectl get svc. Here we go, the load balancer is there at port 880. So now I should be able to go localhost port 8080 and access my API. So let's try it. Localhost port 8080. Here you go. And the API is simple. It just gives you the IP and then what machine it's installed on. So the API is working at port 80, so the service is working. So for the next step, I'm gonna scale it. So right now, if you do kubectl get pods, you only have one pod. So let's say I have lots of customers, they're visiting my API. I need to scale out. I need to have 2 more instances. So to scale out, all you need to do is kubectl scale deployment, and then you give the name of your deployment, and then you specify replicas, and then the count 3. Oops, I had a typo here. So it's kubectl scaled. So let's see how many pods we have now. Wow, we have now 3. 2 of them has just started 4 seconds ago. So what's the difference? Now if I access, technically every time you access, you can have one of those 3 pods. But since browser cached them, I can try accessing them using the command line. If I do curl, so the first one is kubia. You can see here HZXRT. If I try to access it again, it's a different one, SNRK. And you can see you can match them to the pod name. Each time it's a different pod. So that's the service using the load balancer. So here we go. You have your first cluster, you deployed your API, and you scaled it out in a matter of few minutes on, and you can do it on Windows using Docker. So one last thing I want to show is Docker dashboard. So if you don't like the command line using the kubectl, there's a dashboard which allows you to do all those stuff in a graphical manner. So to install it, you need to run a few commands here. I'm gonna put those in the description. So you do kubectl apply, and there's this YAML file which has the instruction to deploy the dashboard. So this one, and then this one installs it. Then you need to expose this using a proxy. So you do kubectl proxy. So now we started the proxy. So now to access it is, you can see it's on port 8001. So if I go localhost 8001, I should access the Kubernetes cluster. Oh, actually, it's not just there's a full URL for it. So yeah, I'm gonna put the URL in the description of the video. So then to enable to log in, you need a token, and then to generate a token, you need to run this command, but it has to be done in a PowerShell. So I'm gonna start the Windows PowerShell here, and then paste this. So here we have a token. So I'm gonna copy this, paste it here, sign in, and voila, you have a Kubernetes dashboard with your pods, 3 pods, 1 deployment, replica sets, services. Kubernetes is the default one. This is the one we created for our app, localhost 8080, and whole bunch of graphs and different settings, ingress services. You can get on later in another video, but that's all I want to show you in this video. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to deploy it in a full-fledged multi-node Kubernetes clusters. Thank you, and see you in the next video.